Namo tassa bhagavatu arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavatu arahato samma sambuddhassa. All right. So, first of all, I'm very sorry for canceling the sutra class. I was unbelievably knackered, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to cancel today's class. So I'm very sorry if you guys had sort of canceled plans or something like that. But nature. All right. So let's turn to page number 87, please. And page number 87, we did Passaddhi, and today we'll start off with Lahuta or lightness, right? Lightness, Lahuta. The twofold lightness has a characteristic of subsiding of heaviness, Garubhava, in the mental body and the consciousness. Sorry. In the mental body and the consciousness, respectively. Its function is to crush heaviness. It is manifested as non-sluggishness. Its proximate cause is the mental body and consciousness. It should be regarded as opposed to such defilements as sloth and torpor, which creates heaviness. Now, this is quite similar. The action of this Chetasika is quite similar to the Aloka Kasina as well, right? To the Aloka Kasina. Like the Aloka Kasina brings a sense of lightness to the mind, the lightness or Lahuta here too brings a sense of lightness with regards to the consciousness and the body of other Chetasikas that arise, right? Body of other Chetasikas that arise. Now, body of other Chetasikas that arise. Now, when it comes to the Chetasikas, because there are so many Chetasikas arising, this sort of a Chetasika, where it comes into play is now when we feel, for example, when we do something which is good, right? When we do, or when we are at a consciousness or a mental moment of goodness, it feels so alleviating. It feels so enlightening. It feels so calming, isn't it? Right? And that is brought about by this Chetasika. Right? That sense of calm, clarity, not calm, clarity, I'm sorry. That sense of lightness. When we do something which is bad, we feel our minds are busy. You know, there's so much of things, the blood is rushing, the muscles, all of these things we experience in the body and the mind. Why? Because of the heaviness that the akusalas or unwholesome Chetasikas of the Chittas carry. But in terms of something which is wholesome, that lightness in a wholesome activity or attribute is brought about by by this Chetasika, right? By this Chetasika. Moving on. Malleability, mudita. The twofold malleability has a characteristic of subsiding of rigidity, right? In the mental body and consciousness, respectively. Its function is to crush rigidity. It is manifested as non-resistance, and its proximate cause is the mental body and consciousness. It should be regarded as opposed to such defilements, such as wrong views and conceit, which create rigidity. Now, something that I must mention with regard to lightness, right, is this Chetasika also teaches us a lesson when we perform something which is good, right? When we perform something which is good. Now, what is that lesson? When it comes to doing or performing something, now, for example, let us say, within a lot of the Asian crowd who performs, now specifically we see this in Sri Lanka with regard to the Buddha Puja or the lighting of the lamp at home, right? Now, sometimes people cling on to that practice so much that they sort of feel a sense of guilt, a sense of guilt, a sense of sin, right? When they cannot, or when they are unable to light, or they forget to light the lamp, or leave the water which they offer to the altar every morning, or the food that they offer, whatever, they feel a sense of guilt, right? Now, a wholesome action, when done with pure awareness and wisdom, cannot lead to mentalities such as that, right? Mentalities such as that. Now, to say, when we come down to mudita, now we are talking about rigidity, right? Subsiding of rigidity, right? Now, in a way, do you see how lightness and rigidity, right? How mudita and lahuta works together, right? When you are wholesome, when you have a wholesome state of mind, you are not fixed onto what you want to perform or do. You are always, you're flexible, you're willing to work, right? It comes intrinsically. You are not set in your ways. You are willing to listen and hear out another person, right? These are qualities of a person that is wholesome in nature. For example, this is stated with great detail with regards to the Metta Sutta, right? Remember, right? The Metta Sutta has all of these things within it, and we are learning now as foundation of consciousness how these Chetasikas, now understanding these Chetasikas are so beautiful in that way because it gives us such an insight into what a wholesome mind is made of, right? What a wholesome mind is made of, right? So mudita is the subsiding of rigidity. You are not fixed. So for example, even when it comes to our precepts, right? Even when it comes to our precepts, because of this sense of rigidity, when we fail to keep up with the precept, which we probably would fail sometimes, you know, because of lack of mindfulness or whatever it is, right? Lack of confidence, security, different reasons can affect the quality of our precepts, right? But because of this rigidity, what happens? Guilt arises afterwards, right? Because of the guilt, because of consistent guilt, what happens? You think, okay, I'm not a person who can do this. You know, I'm not a person who can do this. And you fall away from the practice. Why? Because you're rigid, right? Now, that is a sign to say the foundation of your action is not pure. Or maybe, to put it in another way, you do not have enough or right understanding of what you are doing and your potential to tread on the path. So what should we then do? We should learn a bit more and understand the attitude necessary a bit more, how to look at a situation a bit more, which will enable us to act more effectively with regards to the wholesome mind, right? To the wholesome mind. The proximate cause is the mental body and consciousness. That is clear. We've explained this in Pasadhi as well, right? That is clear. Now, moving on. Kammanyata, right? Kammanyata, wieldiness. The twofold wieldiness has a characteristic of subsiding of unwieldiness. Akammanya bhava, akammanya bhava, in the mental body and consciousness, respectively. Its function is to crush unwieldiness. It is manifested as success of the mental body and consciousness in making something an object. I'll read that again. Its function is to crush unwieldiness. It is manifested as success of the mental body and consciousness in making something an object, right? Its proximate cause is the mental body and consciousness. It should be regarded as opposed to the remaining hindrances which create unwieldiness of the mental body and consciousness, right? Of the mental body and consciousness. Now, when we speak about an attribute such as ekaggata or sati or samadhi even, right? These refer to a practice where one is able to bring one's attention when there are many objects towards one object and stabilize the mind upon this object. When we meditate and if we do not have the foundation of sila, what happens? The mind rushes everywhere. The mind may call you names. The mind will take you away from the practice in a certain way. The mind will make the meditation quite difficult. Why? Because of this, because of the lack of that wholesome energy to support your practice. Right, to support your practice. Regardless, of course, there are other things as well. For example, your mind may be wholesome, but it might be not used to focusing. So they are there as well. It's not all about the unwholesome, but the unwholesome part play a very prominent role in this, right? You can't be consistent. You can't be a bad person in mind who's cunning and all of these things and develop a sense of, pure samadhi. It will not happen. The Buddha says the moment the hindrances arise, your meditation will suffer. Yeah, your meditation will suffer because it is a lack or the suppressing or the absence of the hindrances which allow for that pristine mind to exist throughout the mind or in the mind, right? So this allows the consciousness or the rest of the Chaitasikas, right? How am I saying consciousness or the rest of the Chaitasikas? It says the mental body and consciousness, right? Mental body and consciousness. Now to sort of be able to take the object, right? To take the object and be with the object, to wield the object, right? To wield the object. Moving on. Proficiency, pagunyatha. The twofold proficiency has a characteristic of healthiness of the mental body and consciousness, respectively. Its function is to crush unhealthiness of the mental body and consciousness. It is manifested as absence of disability. Its proximate cause is the mental body and consciousness. It should be regarded as opposed to lack of faith, etc., which cause unhealthiness of the mental body and consciousness, right? Unhealthiness of the mental body and consciousness. It is manifested as the absence of disability, right? It is manifested as the absence of disability, and its function is to crush unhealthiness and of the mental body and consciousness. So pagunyata gives a sense of efficiency. Now, when you are well aware of your abilities, not in a deluded fashion, but in a pure fashion, when you are clear upon the fact of what you are able to do and what you are not able to do, when you are secure in your life, you find that you have a sense of confidence, you have a sense of empowerment coming from within, which supports what you want to do in life in general, right? Now, that sort of a proficiency comes through this Chaitasika, right? Comes through this Chaitasika where you are able to sort of have a sense of trust in yourself, right? In your capacities, right? That is brought by pagunyatha, right? I hope I'm not going too fast. Am I going too fast? Yes. So with regards to the mental body, right? With regards to the mental body, now there was a definition here. Let's look at the definition. Yeah. So it says the next 12 universal beautiful Chaitasikas fall into 6 pairs, each containing one term that extends to the mental body and the other that extends to the consciousness. In this context, the mental body is a collection of associated Chaitasikas. So the mental body is now when, for example, Pagunyata arises, it doesn't arise alone, right? It has a another plethora of Chaitasikas that arise with regards to whatever consciousness that is arising, right? That is known as the mental body Lakshman, and then the body in the sense of an aggregation, right? Now the body refers to the base or the consciousness that arises, right? With regards to the elements that the effect that it has on both, right? The effects that it has on both in terms of the aggregation as well as the associated Chaitasikas that arise, right? It is just on top of page number 87, right? Now, moving on. Rectitude. Rectitude. Let me know if I'm going too fast, please, on the chat. Rectitude is straightness, right? Rectitude is straightness. Now, we call this also ujubhava, right? You hear me using the word uju. No, do I use the word? No, probably not. So this is being upright, straight, direct, right? That is also something actually even in the development of any wholesome, being straight and direct in a way that the position is understood falls under the practice of wholesome, right? The twofold rectitude has a characteristic of uprightness of the mental body and consciousness. Respectively, its function is to crush tortuousness of the mental body and consciousness. Its manifestation is non-crookedness. Its proximate cause is the mental body and consciousness. It should be regarded as opposed to hypocrisy and fraudulence, which create crookedness in the mental body and consciousness. Now, rectitude is now when we perform something which is wholesome, we have a way in this consciousness, or we have a sense in this consciousness that we can be direct, that we can talk about it openly. We have a sense of where we are able to discuss about whatever actions of wholesome that we have conducted, right? If I am to ask you, name the most, the best, the most wholesome thing that you have done, it's an easy conversation to have. But if I am to ask you, name the most unwholesome thing that you have done, it is a little bit of an awkward conversation, or it is something of a nervous topic to put out there, right? Now that directness or that openness comes through this Chaitasika, rectitude, right? Rectitude, ujukata, right? Do we have any questions that you would like to ask before we move on to the next? Yes, Padma. Yes, Padma.
Can you please explain what you meant by an object in wieldiness?
Yes, object in wieldiness. Now just imagine wielding a sword.
Yeah.
Yeah. Likewise, now the Chaitasikas, they arise together, pass away together with the consciousness.
Yeah.
They also have the same object.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question, or if anyone has a question. Yes, Anuma, you can unmute your mic.
Unmuted here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, Anuma.
Yeah. Bhante, can you please give an example for proficiency?
Okay. An example for proficiency. Is that your only question, Anuma?
Yes, because it's not clear. It's not very clear. So I thought,
All right.
yeah.
So proficiency has the characteristic of healthiness of the mental body and consciousness, respectively. Its function is to crush unhealthiness of the mental body and consciousness. Now, just imagine we go through a really rough day, right? We
Mhm.
go through a really
Yeah.
rough day, stressed out, meetings are bad, the meetings were very hectic, the boss was rude, just imagine a day like
Yeah.
that. You
Mhm.
you feel so tired at the end of the day. You can't wait to just take a shower and just sit in the bed, right?
Mhm.
You feel
Yeah.
sort of like drained, right? Now that
Yeah.
is the opposite of proficiency,
All right. Okay.
right? Where you feel now, for example, now let's say you give a dana noma, right? You give a
Yes.
you you
Yeah.
you do a beautiful dana, right? You do a beautiful
Yeah.
dana. And when you do that, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for next year or next month when I'm able to do it again.
Yeah.
Now that
Yeah.
proficiency, Anoma.
Okay. Thank you, Bhante. Now it's clear.
that
Okay.
sense of oh gosh, that sense of healthiness, that sense of connectedness, that sense of not lightness, because we have a different one for that, the sense of it's it's a difficult,
It's happiness also in a way. Is
uh,
it happiness? Yeah. Not happiness. No. Being.
it's more of
No.
like confidence, it's more of like empowerment.
Okay. Right.
It's more of a
Empowerment.
sense of
Yeah.
empowerment, the absolute opposite of that stressed out day, that
Yeah.
stressed out day,
Yeah.
where you have now, everyone gave the boss now gave you compliments, commended your work,
Mm-hmm.
your peers were very complimentary as well, and you can do a lot of work, right? Because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
supported, and all of that. Now
Mm-hmm.
that is proficiency.
Okay.
Okay, Anna?
Thank you, Bhante. Now it's clear. Thank you.
Yeah. Are there any other? Pushpa?
Is it fulfillment? Do you feel fulfilled? Is that proficiency?
The thing is, all of these words go close to it,
Yeah,
but not really hitting it on the nail, not really hitting it on the nail. It's like, in another way, you want to go on a jog.
Oh,
Your feet are not allowing you to,
yeah.
or your mind is not allowing you to, right? Just imagine the other way around, right? You can go on a jog, the feet and mind is also supporting you, right? That sense of that sense of course, healthiness is right. I mean, healthiness, it's that healthiness, that potency of the, that potency that is brought out by the Chetana or the volition, right? But I feel like empowerment like goes closest to it, but still empowerment is also not the exact word, Yeah, Pushpa, do you get the idea of it?
Yeah, I got the idea of it.
Yeah?
Thank you, Bhante.
All right, Pushpa. Right. Is there anyone else who would like to ask? You can just go ahead and unmute your mic if you want to. All right. Then moving on. Abstinences. Birati. Samma vacha, samma kammanto, samma ajivo cha titissa virattiyo nama. Right speech, right action, right livelihood. These three are termed abstinences, virati. abstinence, the abstinences. The viritis are three beautiful mental factors which are responsible for the deliberate abstinence from wrong conduct by way of speech, action, and livelihood. In mundane consciousness, the viritis are operative only on an occasion when one intentionally refrains from a wrong mode of conduct for which an opportunity has arisen. When a person refrains from evil deeds without an opportunity for their performance arising, this is not the case. I'm sorry, I read it all wrong. When a person refrains from evil deeds without an opportunity for their performance arising, this is not a case of virati, but of pure moral conduct, sila. The commentators distinguish three types of virati: natural abstinence, abstinence by taking precepts, and abstinence by eradication. Natural, now this is a very important part, focus. Natural abstinence, sampatta virati, is the abstinence from evil deeds when the opportunity arises to engage in them, due to the consideration of one's social position, age, level of education, etc. An example is refraining from theft out of concern that one's reputation would be hurt if one is caught. Shall we read that again? Yeah. Natural abstinence is the abstinence from evil deeds when the opportunity arises to engage in them, due to consideration of one's social position, age, level of education, etc. An example is refraining from theft out of concern that one's reputation be hurt if one is caught. Second one, abstinence by undertaking precepts, samadhana virati, is abstinence from evil deeds because one has undertaken to observe the precepts. For example, the 5 precepts of abstaining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, false speech, and intoxicants. That is clear. Abstinence by eradication, right? Samucheda virati is the abstinence associated with the supramundane path consciousness, which arises eradicating the dispositions towards evil deeds. Whereas the previous 2 viratis are mundane, this one is supramundane, right? Again, abstinence by eradication is the abstinence associated with the supramundane path consciousness, which arises eradicating the dispositions towards evil deeds. Whereas the previous 2 viratis are mundane, this one is supramundane. The viratis comprise 3 distinct mental factors mentioned in the text: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Right? Is that clear? Are there any questions before we move on? All right, moving on. 1. Right speech, samma vacha. Right speech is the deliberate abstinence from wrong speech, from false speech, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous talk. Right action. Now, something that you would now notice with regards to these 3 parts is these factors leads to the arising of negative mental states and also the arising of future negative mental states, which puts one off from the path of practice. And also disturbs one who is trying to tread on the path. Right? It is a disturbance. It is something which puts you off. It is something which fills the mind with hate and lust and all the defilements that would arise associated with what you do, speak, and think. Right? So, right speech, then right action. Samma kammanta. Right action is the deliberate abstinence from wrong bodily action, from killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. Killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. Right livelihood, samma ajiva. Right livelihood is the deliberate abstinence from wrong livelihood, such as dealing in poisons, in intoxicants, weapons, slaves, or animals for slaughter. The three viratis have the respective characteristics for non-transgression by bodily misconduct, by wrong speech, and by wrong livelihood. Their function is to shrink back from evil deeds. They are manifested as the abstinence from such deeds. Their proximate causes are the special qualities of faith, shame, fear of wrongdoing, fewness of wishes, etc. They should be regarded as the mind's aversion to wrongdoing. Again, the three viratis have the respective characteristics of non-transgression by bodily misconduct, by wrong speech, by wrong livelihood. By wrong livelihood, their function is to shrink back from evil deeds. They are manifested as abstinence from such deeds. The approximate causes are the special qualities of faith, shame, fear of wrongdoing, fewness of wishes, etc. They should be regarded as the mind's aversion to wrongdoing. It is quite clear. Also, if we put this down to science, it is said when it comes to motivating the mind towards a healthy life, a healthy life which contributes towards the well-being of mind and body. It is said that it's in neuroscience, it is said that the brain relates more to a command of abstinence than telling the mind that something else is a better thing to do. Example. For example, let's talk about the diet. Telling yourself, I will not eat carbs, is more effective than trying to brainwash your mind into saying salads are better than carbs. In reality, salads are not better than carbs. Carbs taste much more better, right, than salads ever could, right? So rather than the brainwashing or telling yourself or washing or telling yourself, I prefer this, it is more effective to say, I abstain from this. I am not going to do this, right? I am not going to do this. Now, does anyone have any questions before we move on to the rest? All right, moving on. Illimitables. Appamanya, right? Karuna mudita pana appamanyayo namati. Compassion, appreciative joy. These are termed illimitables. The illimitables. There are 4 attitudes towards living beings called the illimitables because they are to be developed towards all living beings and thus have a potentially limitless range. The four illimitable states are loving kindness, metta, compassion, karuna, appreciative joy, mudita, and equanimity, upekkha. These four are also called Brahma Viharas, divine abodes or sublime states. Although four illimitables are recognized as ideal attitude towards beings, only two, compassion and appreciative joy, are included as Chaitasikas under the heading of the illimitables. This is because loving kindness, as we have seen, is a mode of the Chaitasika adosa, right? Now, adosa, you might like to go up to that chart in table 1.7, as I remember, the chart with all the displaying Chaitasikas, and right in front of adosa, within brackets, metta, right? Because this will be something that you will have to remember to answer certain questions which will come in future, right? This is because loving kindness, as we have seen, is a mode of the Chaitasika adosa, non-hatred. And equanimity is a mode of Chaitasika tatramanjatata, right? Tatramanjatata, neutrality of mind. So please go up, go to that table and write in front of adosa metta in within brackets, and tatramanjatata is upekkha within brackets, right? Just give me a thumbs up when you're done. Okay. Okay. All right. Neutrality of mind. Non-hatred does not necessarily manifest as loving kindness. Non-hatred does not necessarily manifest as loving kindness. Very important point to remember. It can appear in other modes as well. But when loving kindness does arise in the mind, it does so as a manifestation of the Chaitasika non-hatred. A similar relationship holds between the Chaitasika neutrality of mind and the sublime state of equanimity as impartiality towards living beings. Impartiality towards living beings. If you do remember also in the Metta Sutta, where it speaks of the love for another's child as one's own, right? The love for another's child as one's own. This would also relate to the care that we would have. You know, people who sort of use children for servants or housemaids, right? Now that is a thing which is a big no-no in Buddhism or in the Buddhist practice, because another child should be treated as one would treat one's own child, regardless of the walk of life that that child comes from, right? That care, love, empathy should be present, right? A similar relationship holds, okay, I will read that. The two illimitables that appear as mental factors in their own right, not as manifestations of other mental factors, are, I'm sorry, I read that all wrong. I'll read it again. The two illimitables that appear as mental factors in their own right, not as manifestations of other mental factors, are compassion and appreciative joy. Loving kindness and equanimity are present in all beautiful chittas. These two are present only on occasion when their functions are individually exercised. Only on occasions that their functions are individually exercised. Important point to remember again. Right? 1. Compassion, karuna, has a characteristic of promoting the removal of suffering of others the removal of suffering in others. Its function is not being able to bear others' suffering. It is manifested as non-cruelty. Its proximate cause is seeing helplessness in those overwhelmed by suffering. It succeeds when it causes cruelty to subside, and it fails when it produces sorrow. It fails when it produces sorrow. Important point to remember, would be good to even underline or highlight that, right? It subsides when it produces sorrow. Now that is that line. Having compassionate joy, I think I used when we explained this previously, in a sutta or in the Abhidhamma, I wonder, I said, that feeling of saying, in Sri Lankan, there was a monk who said on national television, Karuna is feeling ane apoi, for a person, right? That was the word that he specifically used. That is completely wrong. A word such as oh gosh or ane apoi or something like that would appear to one when one is sorrowful or one is personally connected to that sorrow. Here it is a more wisdom-based emotion, right? A more wisdom-based emotion. Appreciative joy, mudita, or appreciative joy has the characteristic of gladness at the success of others. Its function is being unenvious at others' success. It is manifested as the elimination of aversion. Its proximate cause is seeing the success of others. It succeeds when it causes aversion to subside, and it fails when it produces merriment. Right? Merriment. Now this is somewhat like in the before one, in Karuna, you feel sorrow. This is where you are now sort of going through the emotions of happiness in terms of merriment, the word which is used, where you are again connected personally to that emotion. Right? Now, in the Daru Khandopama Sutta, right, the sutta you regard the sutta of the simile of the log, right? Daru Khandopama Sutta, where, when the Buddha is sitting, I think it was the Neranjana river, whilst having, with his retinue of bhikkhus, a large log is flowing. And the Buddha takes that and he says, this log, which should end up ultimately in the ocean, right? Because the river flows towards the ocean, right? Can go through certain obstacles which will disturb its path to the ocean, right? Meaning the simile is, usually a person who is practicing, in the path of the Noble Eightfold Truths, Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Paths, Patijasampada, Kamma, all of that, the one who is practicing along all of that should reach Nibbana, no question about it. But just as the log may be disturbed in its path, how? The far shore, the near shore, the rocks in the middle, taken away by whirlpools in the river and all of these things, right? We as people walking on the path also come through certain hindrances. And one of the hindrances is monks, when they are, or people in the path, when they are overtaken by emotions of joy and sorrow, or happiness and hate, or whatever it is, those emotions with regards to another person. For example, now a good friend of yours or a friend of yours or a person who is seeking your advice relates to you a story of something that person is going through, which is quite serious. You, without keeping a proper balance of mind, you start howling and screaming and crying. Right? Now causing even more suffering to this person. Right? Now the person who is actually going through the suffering has to now come out of her pain to pacify you. Such a drama queen. Right? Like that, right? Appreciative joy till what?
Why can't it be a drama king? I said.
A drama king and queen. Okay. now like that, appreciative joy and compassion, karuna, operates in those sort of instances, right? Operates on those sorts of instances, right? I hope that is clear. Do we have any questions? Yes, Dale.
Bhante, this when you describe about compassion, now you explain that it's not this aneyapoy and oh gosh, but is it necessary that, okay, you see something and you genuinely feel compassion, but some people explain that it's not only feeling, because that feeling can be just pity, but you got to actually go and do something for it to be real compassion. So you see somebody, say, on the road accident, and you just sit and you really genuinely feel pity. You don't just say Anya, but if you don't do anything, say phone 99 quickly or see whether you can assist, that's not, there's an element of service that you have, there's a need. That's how some people explain. So I just wanted to clarify for me.
Yeah. On that, let's make it more personal, right? Let's make it more personal as an example to maybe understand it better. Now, let's say being or having a sense of compassion towards yourself, right? During the time that you are going through a time of difficulty, right? If we get too emotionally involved in the problem, what happens? You sink into a state of sadness, a state of patheticness, a state of depression, right? Now apply that, right? In the same way, when we, for example, some might feel for a sense of some vigor or urgency to arise, it is this, oh my gosh, it's actually not, right? In the path of practice with regards to wholesome, balance is very important. Being able to balance or come into a state where you are able to balance the emotions as such, right? And this is to say imbalance that comes from, not imbalance, but in balance separately, not one word, imbalance, what that comes out of is understanding, right? This understanding helps you to do something without getting sort of engaging yourself or getting raveled in the situation. For example, take, Dil, you're a mother. Many people here are mothers and fathers. A problem of a child, right? If you get too emotional with the problem, you might be causing more harm than good. Right? When sometimes a child blurts out some offensive word or something which offends you, if you take it too seriously, you might end up being really hurt and affecting the relationship of the child. That is an extreme example. So in that way, we try to have balance. And that is what karuna and mudita, you do not need to be emotionally connected or engaged to actually do something. But because of our mundane experience, we think that is what it is.
Bhante, no, Ajahn Amaro explains, he said unentangled participation.
There you go. Beautiful word. Yeah, absolutely.
That's what he says. No, the reason I asked is we have formed a doctors group very recently among my batchmates, and a lot of the Tamils who were affected by the war, the ethnic war, are here now. Now, at the moment, we are in a situation where they feel that the Sinhalese, which are the majority race, that though we know that it shouldn't have happened, that we are not doing anything, that we are not saying it is right, but what they are saying is, particularly the Christians, they are saying that Christ is saying that, not just saying that it's not right, it's not, you must actually not get emotionally involved, but you should bring it out and say, redress now, people are missing their family. And we don't want to talk about it. So they are finding a lot of fault that we just accept the situation, but we don't want to bring it to the authorities. Why aren't the people who are missing their families? And so I have stayed away from it, right? But so we are being lumped as people that we don't actually do something we can do, not emotionally get entangled. So that's why I wanted to ask whether that's the correct attitude. We know it's wrong, it shouldn't happen. We'll never condone such things. That's what happened, and we know there were faults, the government didn't act quickly. We know lots of things, right? And we would never wish it, and we have gone out of the way. Like I ran clinics for all these people for a whole year. But is it right that because we are not going and pushing things and doing that, we are not doing our duty, that we are not really compassionate? That's the reason I just asked, because we are facing that situation at the moment, and I've stayed away from the whole discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I can't comment on that specifically, because if I open it up, because that is a controversial topic, I would not want to comment on it.
Yes.
But if we open it up, with regards to the Buddha, if the Buddha was an activist in his own right, right, and he stood up for things, right, which he felt was against one's happiness, right? Now, a very example is there was this girl who studied with me, went to Oxford, then later on went to Harvard for her further master's, and really intelligent, really intelligent. And when she was also young, she won a Queen's Award for literature, very, 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 very talented and smart and intelligent. Now she's an activist for human rights and women's rights and all of that in Sri Lanka. And I follow her on Facebook, and I've seen certain views that she has publicized regarding certain murders which happened in Sri Lanka in the past few weeks, and the action which was taken by the government. Now, knowing who she is, she was always considered a vociferous person, right? But I see that with all the intelligence and how smart she is, she has a problem of getting emotionally entangled in the conversation, which brings down the quality of her activism. Because when I would read her posts, I would say, okay, Kavinda, I think you, oh my gosh, I said her name. I would say, I think you need therapy, right? You need to go to therapy and get some help, because, these things are too close to your heart. So that is affecting your judgment of seeing a bigger picture, right? If it came from a more general sense, right, or in a way of right and wrong, without that emotional attachment, it would be more sort of acceptable, right? And I see that for her, it is a great weakness with all the talent that she personally has, right? And even as a monk, I would feel the same way with regards to some things that I do. Of course, there are times that I am emotional, but then I had to remind myself, or sometimes, Auntie Dill, you remind me, hold your horses. So I think it is important to make or put your foot down, but in ways that you are not emotional, because that emotion or that grudge or that sort of pit that you push yourself into alters your understanding and the ability to understand.
Mm.
Right? That is why the more we meditate, the ego centers of the brain reduces, allowing us to see a more, not refined, but a more realistic reality than what we think reality is. Right? Reality is. So that is my answer to you, Dilip.
Thank you.
All right. Now, moving on. Are there any, Samantha, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just thinking about this word compassion, really. Now, compassion, it can have quite a wide range, isn't it? Because say, out of compassion, say, in the case of a bombing or something, you can go and try and help someone, assist someone, the injured person or something, do something for them. But in the case of an arahant, I've also heard stories where, because of their past karma, arahant wouldn't get involved. They would let whatever happens to, say, an arahant would see someone getting beaten up or something, and they wouldn't get involved. Or even Buddha, I can't remember the story, wouldn't get involved because they want them out of compassion for their karma to be utilized and not interfere or something like that. There seem to be two different types of extremes, and it could be misunderstood in a way.
One is the need to not interfere. The first one is?
Not to interfere, but then in a normal, maybe we would do, if you see someone they need help, say if someone's been attacked or something, we would go to that person. One person might just pass them and say, oh, well, I'm not going to get involved. Another person might go and sort of like call them, do something for them, assist them, see if they can sort of like do some first aid or something, until they call the doctors or something, maybe. So would that be compassion to that? Yeah.
Now, with this involvement, yes, Samantha, thank you for that question. Now, for example, with regards to monks, let's take monks, right? Mm-hmm. Now we find that when we look, not much in the UK, but when we look at our Asian roots, we see that monks are getting involved in different industries, right? Now, I remember during a time, there was a time that I was exceedingly popular in Sri Lanka. I was exceedingly popular in Sri Lanka to a place where even if I am sitting at the back of a car, people would be taking their phones out and taking photographs, or people would, if a car is parked and I'm inside, people would come into or near the window, get me to put down the shutter and ask my number. It was such an annoying time, actually. Mm-hmm. And I found that these people who were coming to see me, they were giving me all of these, Bhante, you should get involved with this. Bhante, this person, you should get involved with this. Bhante, you should get, and probably because I had a strong connection to myself, because I had just come down from Burma to Sri Lanka for a project specifically. And this was that time that I got this, fame because of the TV and, all of these other things. Something that I always reminded myself is, I am a forest monk. I am in Sri Lanka to do a specific project. Afterwards, I want to return back, right? So the answer that I gave to those other people is, why am I getting involved? That is not my business, right? Yes, this might have been things which affects a country or something of the sort. It might be all good, but in our capacity, we must understand, for example, there is no, I personally believe, if a monk is conducting English classes for children, that is a waste of that monk's life, right? If a monk is, for example, teaching engineering in a university, I think that is a waste of life. Personally, my personal belief, right? Why? because I believe that we have a greater task to society which excels all of those domains, right? All of those domains. I have young monks who are friends who've been friends with me for a very long time, since the time that I was a layman, who I say, they would say, okay, I want to disrobe because, and these monks would be talented monks, or else, why would I be keeping connections with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
They will be talented monks, so I'm sorry, my shade. Right? These are talented monks.
Mm.
And something that I've been telling them is, look here, you idiot, right? Be a good monk, teach the Dhamma to people, use people, because they would want to disrobe to support their poor parents or something like that. They would want to go and do some sort of business or do some sort of work to support the family. And I'm like, what? If you are a good monk, you will have good supporters. When you have good supporters with your honest interest, your supporters will also want to support your family, right? And we find now, for example, like Venerable Sariputta, who utilized his supporters to do meritorious ceremonies to pass merits to his dead mother. Likewise, it is a normal practice to be able to do that, because that is a way that you contribute and help. Right? You don't need to do these odd jobs. We have, so understanding what you are able to do. It is important that we focus on what part of life we are, right? So in that, not getting emotionally entangled, right, is very, very important. Now, as a monk, I can tell you now, sometimes when my mother would sort of have an argument with my brother, right, she would call me and complain. But I have made it a point not to get emotionally entangled with their problems, because actually it's not my problem specifically. It is just a ruffle between a mother and a son, and she's just annoyed by it. So he relates it to me. So I be a more sort of, calm down, just chill out, this is just, it's temporary, it will get out of it, just advise them in a way that I am not, because if I am emotionally connected, I'm going to be thinking about it all the time, and that is going to disturb my work, right? You do not have to, like, for example, when my dad died and I went into the hospital, I was, everyone around, more than my father dying, it was so difficult because everyone around was looking at me and waiting for me to cry. I think a lot of Sri Lankans sort of have experienced this, because people expect you to cry. People expect you to cry, and if you don't cry, you're like looked upon like, it's sacrilege, right? It's absolute sacrilege. So, but in the path of practice, it's all about balance. It's all about understanding. It's all about wisdom. Right? And you do not need to. That's why that's the difference between us and the Arahants. They operate in a completely different mental atmosphere. It's a completely different level. Right? It's like, for example, in our meditation, when we are able to see the different sensations as we progress, from the first day to the 10th day, the progress that we see is very different, and it is at a different level altogether, because our minds have reached that level and stage. Yeah.
So do Arahants, do they have a higher degree of equanimity?
Oh yes, absolutely.
So that's
absolutely.
why they can be stayed emotionless.
Because of the lack of attachment. I mean, Samantha, let's put away all these other stories. Let's take the Buddha. Maha Karuna, Samapatti Jnana, right? Great compassion, but equanimity also.
Yeah.
Now look at that. The Buddha, right, with great compassion, he would walk miles and miles and miles and miles to support people and to teach Dhamma to people when he sees that people can attain Nibbana. This is of no personal benefit to him.
Yeah.
Right? This is of no personal benefit to him. Right? He goes to visit Angulimala, Patachara, all of these other people, all of these other people, and these people were not people coming from class in society. These were the scum of the time. Right? No benefit to him. He goes to these people and gives the Dhamma in a way that is applicable to them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He wasn't concerned about teaching his Dhamma. He was concerned about other people's enlightenment. Look at that, Samantha. No attachment.
Yes. To
You
free
know,
them from suffering. Yeah.
free them from suffering. Right? Free them from suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. That's lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, Samantha? I
Lovely.
hope
Thank you, Bhante. Yeah.
all, Samantha. Anytime. Anyone else? All right. So now we'll finish the last, right? Non-delusion, amoha. Sabbatapi panindriyena sadding pancha visati me chetasika sobanati veditabha. Together with the faculty of wisdom, these 25 in all are to be understood as beautiful mental factors, right? Panya, wisdom, the wisdom faculty. Panya is wisdom, or knowing things as they really are. It is here called a faculty because it exercises predominance in comprehending things that really are, things as they really are. In the Abhidhamma, the three terms, wisdom, panya, knowledge, jnana, and non-delusion, amoha, are used synonymously. Wisdom has a characteristic of penetrating things according to their intrinsic nature. Yatha sabhava pativeda. Its function is to illuminate the objective field like a lamp. It is manifested as non-bewilderment. Its proximate cause is wise attention, yonso mansikara. Right? Now, sometimes in wisdom, just imagine a mind with wisdom, or the way that you sort of try to develop wisdom. Sometimes you feel that wisdom is sort of putting on data and data and data, right? I hope you're looking at the screen, like putting on data and data and data, like filling it up, like filling up a bin. But when it comes to wisdom, it's more of taking all of these things, if you understand what I mean. To see things as they really are. It is like unlocking doors of your mind through the vanquishing or the suppressing of ego and the hindrances, which allows one to comprehend something as it really is, without the wrong views and all the attachment and all of that which arises within. Right? So the wisdom faculty is the ability to see things as they really are. Its function is to illuminate the objective field like a lamp, to make it clear, right? It is manifested as non-bewilderment, right? Now, let us see the definition of non-bewilderment. Hey Siri, what is the meaning of non-bewilderment?
Okay.
So the quality or state of being lost, perplexed, or confused. The quality or state of being bewildered, right? The state, so the opposite of that, right? So being clear, having clarity and understanding of that, right? Of that. So now we have completed, its proximate cause is wise attention. It is when you have wise attention, that is why training the mind to have wise attention is important. Because it is when wise attention is there, it is when one wishes to see or want to see things in its real way, that wise attention operates, and through wise attention arises prajna, right? Because of wise attention, right? Now, we have finished the 52 Chetasikas. Yes, Dil.
I know explained Panna very well and also Yonisa Manasikara. Where does Yata Bhuta Jnana Dasana, which is also quite similar, isn't it? The knowledge and vision according to reality. So is that like Panna? Because that's like, because Yonisa Manasikara is more wise attention or reflection. So while Panna is just knowing things as they are. So when you say Yata Bhuta Jnana Dasana, is that like both of them are more like Tanya or more like Yonisa Manasikara?
It's a
Or-
process.
Sorry?
So it's a process.
Right.
Process
Okay.
of mind,
Right.
right?
Very
So,
similar thing.
sorry.
Similar, yeah. It's a very similar concept because that is also the knowledge and vision according to the reality.
So Yonisa Manasikara is the adverting of mind to a process of cognition,
Right.
and wisdom is an
Seeing things as they are.
cognition, and wisdom is a state of mind,
Right.
right? A state of mental factor which arises within the mind or which is existent in the mind, right? For example, it is like I have mentioned before that the Buddha's omniscient knowledge. Now we say that the Buddha is omniscient, but the Buddha's omniscient does not exist all the time.
Yeah.
Right? It is something which is taken into, or it is something which is adverted to. It is something that is adverted to, right? For example, I mean, someone asks, oh, great Buddha, how is karma if this and this and this happens, right? Then what does the Buddha do? He adverts on it, and then arises the answer to the question, right? It is like us. Now you are listening to the class, right? You can make a mean cup of tea also, right? But during the class, you're probably not thinking about you making a cup of tea or you cooking a mac and cheese, right? You are in the class, but that does not mean that you do not know how to make a mean cup of tea or a good mac and cheese, right? It's like that. And you advert your mind and then it comes. So it's a process.
So when you say Yata Bhuta Jnana Dasana, it's a process.
Yeah, Yata Bhuta Jnana Dasana is surely a process. It is the way of seeing things as they really are.
Yes.
Right?
Right. Thank you, Bhante. It's almost very similar, but the other one is a mental factor. When you say Panna, it's a state of mind, even though that's also knowing things as they are, but that's a mental factor kind of thing. But
yeah, it is a state that can be developed and developed.
Thank you, Bhante.
All right. Now, what do we have? Oh, okay. Now, we are going to stop here today, right? Very important, before the next class, look over all the Chetasikas, right? I'm just going to read you. Right? I'm just going to read to you the first paragraph, that is the introduction verse, right? In page number 91, right? Please look at it, because then you will understand how you must be prepared for the next class, right? In the following, we will explain in the appropriate ways the association of each of these mental adjuncts with the different states of consciousness. 7 are linked with every type of consciousness. The occasionals are linked in the appropriate ways. 14 are linked with only the unwholesome type, and beautiful factors only with the beautiful types. Understood? What are we going to do next time? We are going to
link
take the Chetasikas and link it to the Chittas, right? So in this Chetasika, right, where does this Chetasika arise? Within the Chittas. Do we understand? All right. So now let's turn to, I think it was, turn to that table, please. This is in page number 79. All right. Yeah, okay. So then we have page number 79. All right. First, we have the ethically variables, right? We have the universals, the 7 universals: contact, feeling, perception, volition, one-pointedness, life faculty, attention, right? I want you to just know what it is. Now, with regards to any of the Chaitasikas, do we have any questions any of the Chaitasikas? The occasionals, now the universals arise, the 7 arise in all the Chittas. In all the Chittas. Initial application, sustained application, decision, energy, zest, desire are the occasionals, right? Which arise occasionally. Then we have the unwholesome 14, which arises within the unwholesome factors, right? The unwholesome factors, some of which would arise with the hatred consciousnesses, some of which would arise with the greed-rooted consciousnesses, some of which are common to both hatred and the greed-rooted, right? Hatred and the greed-rooted, right? For example, the unwholesome universals are delusion, shamelessness, fearlessness of wrong, and restlessness. These will arise in all unwholesome. They are common. They are more to do with delusion. Remember, right? Delusion. So they will arise in both unwholesome and, they will arise in both hatred and greed, right? Then we'll look at the next. Greed, wrong view, conceit, right? And then we have hatred, avarice, envy, avarice, sloth, torpor. Then there would be the hatred section and the hatred section and the greed section there, right? So we will look into this, but make sure. Then we have the beautiful factors. Of the beautiful factors, the beautiful universes, there are 19. All of that: faith, mindfulness, shame, fear of wrong, non-greed, non-hatred, neutrality of mind, tranquility of body, consciousness, mental body, neutrality, tranquility, lightness, malleability, wilderness, proficiency, rectitude, which arises in ways of mental body and consciousness. All of these arise in all beautiful consciousnesses, right? It is not difficult, it is easy, but we have to get through this, okay? Then we have the abstinences, right speech, right action, right livelihood, the illimitables, when practice metta, mudita, and karuna and mudita, compassion and appreciative joy. And then we have the wisdom faculty, when with consciousnesses that have jnana sampayutta, right, which is with right view or with knowledge, with knowledge, and then those to do with the path, right, those to do with the jhanas and the path. So with regards to that, it is important to understand. Please go through the Chaitasikas. Now that is all for today. Now let us discuss about the process of how we are going to continue, because I know people are increasingly becoming a bit busier with the easing up of quarantine, of self-isolation, so it might be a little bit tough to be having 6 classes a week, right? So can I have a show of hands, right? Okay, let me just